Hi everyone, I'm Caress Linzer, Marketing Coordinator with Vanderbloemen, and I'm here today with my colleague Sutton Turner, and we're going to dive deep into the CARES Act. We are so grateful that we've been able to serve so many organizations with the first round of the PPP and all the information. So today we hope that this information that's on this live today, as well as on our website, can help serve you as well. So we're going to dive into it.
Well, and thanks, Caress. I'm super excited that you and I get to do this together today. I think I texted you really early this morning after woke up and realized that the Senate had approved the House and the Senate have approved the second PPP, and so we need to serve as many churches, Christian schools, nonprofits, many times businesses, that will get their information from us. So throughout this whole process, go to our Facebook page, go to our website, follow us on Twitter, and we will keep you up to date as things are happening. So I'm going to share my screen. If you were with us during the first PPP, you'll remember that I created a set of slides there we go, present. I created a set of slides and we just kept on updating them. And so what's great with Google Sheets is that we can, or Google, whatever it is, Presenter or whatever it is, the slide program, we can update it all the time. And so this is the slides. And so I'm going to work from that. And you just go to our website, vanderbloemen.com, and save that link. You can go to churchcovid19.com or schoolcovid19.com, and you'll be able to find all this information there. Okay, so this is separate from the PPP Payroll Protection Program number 1 that was approved on April 3rd of 2020. This is the second round of this, okay? And the first question I know everybody's going to ask me is, well, Sutton, if I got payroll protection PPP number 1, can I get PPP number 2? The answer is yes. The second question I'm going to get is, I'm a church or I'm a Christian school or I'm a nonprofit. Can I get PPP number 2? Because I already got PPP number 1, but can I get PPP number 2? The answer is yes to those two questions. Okay, so so if you're tuning out from here on out, I've answered your 2 questions. So this is as of December 22nd, what we know as of today. Okay, Senate has approved this, and the House has approved it. The key thing here is the president has not signed it. All indications are that the president will sign this, and it will go into law. And then the fourth phase, which I haven't checked, and this is why I can't answer a ton of detailed questions today, is the instructions on how the Small Business Administration will administer this PPP number 2. I don't know. I can tell you what's in the bill that we hope will become law, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The other stuff is going to come, and as it comes, we're going to be sending this out to you all, what the application looks like, what the forgiveness application look like, what are the requirements, what are the changes, but I'll tell you what we know as of today. Okay, let's go. So it does include 501c3 organizations, including churches, nonprofit schools, and small businesses. Here's the key. PPP number 1 was for 500 employees of 500 and below. This is 300 and below. Okay, so if you're a really, really big mega church or a big Christian school and you're at 350, 400 employees, you don't get to apply for PPP number 2. It also has some small business restrictions that do not apply. Here is the link to the bill. Now, soon I will change this once the president signs it to the law, to the actual law. But this is the bill that they voted on last night, and then there's a really good summary. It's like 5,000 pages, the bill. I'll just tell you right now, I haven't read the whole thing. I've just scrolled through, and then read the sections that I think that I need to know for you all. I have not read the whole, there's a ton of this that is about local municipalities, about the vaccine, those types of things. And I'll just give you a rundown real quick of some of the highlights. So this is a $900 billion bill, $900 billion bill. There's about $69 billion for vaccine distributions. There's $82 billion for colleges and schools for those fundings. There's stimulus checks of $600 per person for people making up to $75,000. If it's a couple, it's up to $150,000. There's additional unemployment coverage. So this is very, very similar to PPP number one. This is additional funding, and I think it's about $300 a week. There's additional payroll tax deferrals. So in PPP number one, people were able to defer, organizations were able to defer payroll taxes for a period of time. This is an additional deferral, so it pushes out those payroll taxes for the organization even farther. And here's a key for all of you small businesses out there. This PPP, as it's written right now in the way that I read it, is providing the money that you got in PPP number one. Hang with me. The money that you got in PPP number one, and you use that money in PPP number one for your small business, okay? And you paid for expenses. Before, you weren't able to deduct those expenses in your business expense or your personal expenses, depending upon how you file. In this new updated PPP number two, it actually goes back to PPP number one and says that the expenses that you, the dollars that you used in those PPP number one loans, those are now tax deductible. Okay, so that's a big thing. If you're a small business, especially if you're a single, you're a sole proprietor, or you're a subcorp S, or any of those type, LLP, LLC, those types. Obviously, it doesn't apply to churches, but it applies to those small businesses. Very, very, very big development there. Okay, so what does it do to the payroll protection program? $284 billion. $284 billion that's going to go to the PPP. And that's what we're going to focus on from here on out. The PPP, who can apply? Okay, I already said it's for organizations for less than 300 employees. The second point is you've used or you will use the full amount of your PPP, your first PPP. So this is clarity on, I got PPP number one. Can I apply for PPP number two? Absolutely. Okay, here is, and I put it in red, the one thing that I really see that is going to limit the organizations that can apply for PPP number two. Here it is. At least 25% reduction in gross receipts. Okay, that's also could be gross revenue, or that could be total revenue, depending on what kind of organization you have, in the first, second, or third quarters compared to relative to the same quarter in 2019. Okay, so what that means is that if you're going to compare, let's just say quarter two of 2020 to quarter two in 2019, and if it was a reduction in 25% of your revenue, if your revenue went down 25% from 2019 to 2020, you can apply. If your revenue stayed the same or went up in 2020, you cannot apply for this PPP number two. Correct? Does that make sense? I get that?
Yes, that definitely makes sense.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because that's like the one. That's why I put it in red, Caress, because it was like the main thing that I see that's kind of different in PPP number two. Okay, you're not going to be able to submit for this until 1/1 of 2021. Okay, so that's good because we don't even have an application yet from the Small Business Administration. All right, so between now, what is today? Today's the 22nd. So within the next 8 or 9 days, we're going to get all this information out to you, and you stay plugged into our Facebook Live, you stay plugged into our social media, and we'll get that information out to you as soon as possible. Churches, nonprofits seem to be eligible. There's wording all around there that says that it is, that those organizations are eligible. So right now, I'm going with that. Again, very similar, 2.5 times the average monthly payroll, similar to PPP number 1. Okay, so it's very, very similar. If you did the calculation on your payroll costs during PPP number 1, you're gonna nail this. Okay, no loan greater than $2 million. Okay, so this is smaller. It was $10 million on PPP number 1. This is $2 million maximum loan amount in PPP number 1. Food services. So if you're a restaurant or some type of food services, you can receive 3.5 times your average monthly payroll. Very similar to PPP number 1, that any affiliation between organizations, you apply, it's basically whichever works best for you. You can either affiliate together or you can affiliate separately. And we got into this many times with churches that also have a school, and depending upon, should we apply together or should we apply separate? I answered a lot of that question, and I'll just tell you, it sounds like it's very similar to PPP number 1, whichever works best for you. Whichever works best, the way that you should, that's the way that you should apply. Let's see, fees waived for both the borrower and the lenders to encourage participation, very similar to PPP number 1. We have a 60-40 cost allocation between payroll and non-payroll costs in order to receive forgiveness. Okay, very, very similar to PPP number 1. That means that 60% of the loan that you get from the government must be used on payroll. And what do I mean by payroll? That's salary, wages, and benefits. That includes all of that. The other part is these non-payroll costs. And I'm going to get into that, what are eligible, because it's changed a little bit in PPP number 2. Similar requirement that you cannot reduce salaries or wages by greater than 20%. Now, hear me again. This is just the same as PPP number 1, is that you can't reduce salaries and wages by more than 25%. You can reduce hours. You just can't reduce salaries and wages. Key point there. All right. So the loan amount, how do we calculate the loan amount? It's very, very, very similar to PPP number 1. It's going to be limited. We believe that it's going to be limited to $100,000 annual salary. It includes tips, vacation, health benefits, retirements, taxes. You take the gross salary amount per employee. Do not include the employer portion of the federal taxes that are separate from the gross salary. 1099 contractors are not included in payroll cost. They should be applied separately. And again, limited to $100,000 annual salary. Housing allowance, we believe, are going to be included again, just like it was PPP number 1, and payroll costs, but limited to $100,000. And here's the key is the wording in these documents is saying that it's funding $284 billion to fund the PPP. So the PPP is already established, and this is additional funding. So this isn't like a brand new program. And so if you did PPP number 1, you should use the things that you learned during PPP number 1 to apply to PPP number 2. The only thing that I see as a big difference is that you have to have a reduction in your gross receipts comparing 2020 to 2019. Okay, so I put in here similar calculation. This is the same thing that I had in my previous PPP number 1 slides. Again, I'm going to just hit this because this is the big part here. We have 60% of the loan must be used for payroll costs. Again, we've got, and they've already said it. If you've done PPP number 1, they've already said it. So it's either an 8-week or a 24-week to receive the loan proceeds and to use those funds. Let's see what else. Okay, here we go. Here's something that's new. So the first part is not new, and that is so 40% of your loan can be used on these things. The first item we're assuming is the same from PPP number 1, which is mortgage. You can use it for mortgage interest, rent payments, utilities, and interest. Okay, so that's the same. We're assuming that that's the same as PPP number 1. What they've added in PPP number 2 is covered operating expenditures. Okay, so that's payment of software, human resource and accounting needs, those types of things. Covered property damage costs. Okay, so this is public disturbances occurred during 2020, okay, that are not covered for the insurance, by the insurance. Covered supplier costs. So, and here's a lot of detail. I'm not going to read all that, but it's basically supplier costs of perishable goods, and then covered worker protection expenditures. So this is your PPP equipment. You had to put up plexiglass. You had to do those types of, so those types of expenses can be included into that. So, so those are a little bit different and help you to spend those dollars at 40%. And then I just want to highlight on the rest of this, the only thing I know on the application is they have some wording here that if your loan is going to be less than $150,000, they're going to make it super easy for you to apply. And I'm sure they're going to make it super easy for you for your forgiveness. That was the case in PPP number 1. Looks like they're carrying that theme over to PPP number 2. The rest of this, I'm just going to have to update it when that stuff starts coming out in the next 10 days. Loan forgiveness, requesting forgiveness. I'm going to update that as it's come. What happens after the loan, filling out the loan forgiveness application, a spreadsheet. Renee's going to build another spreadsheet, assuming that there's some additional changes. We'll take our old PPP number 1 spreadsheet. We'll change it, adapt it to PPP number 2. You'll be able to download that for free from our website. We'll be glad to help you with that. And the one question that, and I've already looked at it, I looked detail, very, very similar to the question that I got at PPP number 1 was, Sutton, I'm concerned about separation of church and state. If you're a church, you're a nonprofit, you're a Christian school, and worried about separation of church and state, they have the language in there of 13 CFR 112, 113, and 114. They literally take the exact same wording that was in PPP number 1, and it's going to be, it's in the bill right now. It hasn't been signed into law, but it's in the bill right now. That looks like it's going to be signed into law. So that's, I know that's a big concern for a lot of our folks that are listening. And so, so that's there. You can follow me on Twitter. I released some information early this morning when I had it. And so if you want to keep up, I'll be glad to help you out in any way I can. Reach out to me. And again, Caress, we've talked about it. We're gonna keep everybody up to date, and people can reach out to us. One thing I didn't say at the beginning, comments, we're going to be answering your comments during this time period and throughout. So keep up with us on Facebook, Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. So any way that we can help you and communicate with you, we're going to do that. But right now, this is all we know. But the big takeaways for you is, yes, churches are included. Yes, nonprofits are included. Yes, Christian schools are included in PPP number 2. Yes, you can apply if you've gotten a loan in PPP number 1. Yes, you can apply. The big thing that I see that's the change is you have to have a reduction in your revenue from 2019. So 2020 has to be lower by 25% than it was in 2019 for a comparable period. And the words that they're using is comparing what, let's just say Q2 of 2019 to Q2 of 2020, or Q2 of or Q3 of 2019 to Q3 of 2020. So it's comparing comparable periods of time for those two things. So I hope that that helps you all. Any thoughts that you have, Chris, before we sign off?
I mean, I just want to thank you, Sutton, for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us and breaking all of this down. And just like you said, I hope that everyone can leave comments down below so that we can get back to you and just serve you throughout this process.
That's awesome. Thank you. Well,
Thank
thanks for jumping on and doing this with me, Caress. And this is going to be another fun 10 or 11 days here. So hopefully we get to help a lot of folks. So this will be fun.
Yes, thank you, Sutton.